My name is Danny Lax. I'm the chef at Tortilla Restaurant and the owner of DML Hospitality Group. I have been in the restaurant business since I was pretty much a little kid, and always kind of loved being around food and being in the kitchen, kind of hanging out with other people. Turned into a career, and in the last couple of years, I opened my own restaurant in Manhattan. I recently competed on Chopped, the food competition show on the Food Network, and am currently working on a project to open another restaurant. So things are kind of falling out in the right place. And I grew up sort of dreading Cholent because it always was that one plain flavor, and it was always the same week in and week out. And it just seemed like growing up, that was the perpetual thing you knew was going to happen. And so for me, always, it was like, let's just try and do something unique and a little different. And so we've always played around with different flavors. And when Alfredo and I were talking, my partner Alfredo and I were talking about this opportunity, him not knowing what Cholent really is, but understanding sort of stews and being from Mexico, and that, that's sort of inherent there, eating stewed products. And so we came up with a flavor profile that takes from both of our backgrounds, and takes traditional Cholent recipe and meets it in the middle with the idea of using fresh chilies and local ingredients that are indigenous to Mexico. What's my favorite Jewish food? Oh, I could eat falafel, hummus, and pita for the rest of my life and be the happiest person in the world.
What's your favorite all-time food?
You're gonna laugh. It's a Slurpee. But if I had a Slurpee machine in my apartment, that would be all I needed. Ours was very traditional Mexican chilies. We took what is a panca pepper and roasted them down, mixed them to create a sauce with a little red wine vinegar, some salt, some pepper, and a little bit of water. And then we took Cholent meat, or I guess what some people would call just very fatty beef, and mixed it with some pinto beans, peppers, onions, carrots, potatoes, fresh corn, actually, because that's sort of a very heavily Mexican ingredient that we're sort of proud to always put in our meals. And this amazing sauce that's really rich in flavor and really kind of adds this amazing ting to the whole thing. And it's something that's very light at the same time as being very filling. So it's kind of fun. Tonight's theme is pairing Cholent with I guess we could say liquor, not necessarily scotch, because in our case we're going to use a tequila. I think people will be excited to have something that's a little bit off the beaten path to say for Cholent. Cholent's just, essentially it's a poor man's stew that can sit on a stove for 12 hours and kind of turn into something amazing. It's sort of inherent in the Jewish community because the idea was you could start it before Shabbos, and by the time you wake up on Saturday morning after shul, it's ready to eat, and sort of, sat there for 12 hours and cooked at a low temperature. So that's sort of how it plays a role in all of our lives. But the idea of a stewed product has sort of been around since the beginning of time. And so it's our way of taking something culturally that's been around forever. I'm excited to be part of the Bread Alumni community. We're excited to be here, and hopefully tonight's going to be an amazing event.
Tonight I wanted to welcome you all to our space. This is called Reunion. And basically we're going to have Elimelech talk to you about what is Cholent, why we eat it, and then we're going to get chefs from different restaurants in New York. We're going to have a Moroccan Dafina prepared by Yehuda at Darna Restaurant. We're going to do a Mexican Cholent prepared by Danny and Alfredo. They have a restaurant called Tortilla. They're going to tell you about their Mexican Cholent. And then we have a beef Cholent and a lamb Cholent prepared by Shui at Broth. So it's going to be Cholents from different places. We're going to have scotches or different type of alcoholic beverages plated with each thing. So the rundown of the evening is going to go. We're going to have the chef talk about the food. You're going to be eating it as he's talking about it. You're going to get a shot of one of those drinks that go along with it. Then we're going to introduce the next speaker, the next Cholent, and we're going to have a good food fest, okay?
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
My name is Rabbi Elimelech. I've met many of you before, and for those of you that I haven't, nice to meet you. So, I love Shabbat. My kids think I love Shabbat because I don't work, so I get to spend time with them. My wife thinks I love Shabbat because I'm home, so I get to spend time with her. But the real reason I love Shabbat, a little Cholent and a lot of scotch. And that's why we're here tonight. So Shabbat is a very spiritual day. We all know that, right? The seventh day of the week, God created the world, 6 days, rested on the seventh. And on Shabbat, we just put aside a little time to focus on the spiritual aspects of life. Now, aside from all the spirituality on Shabbat, it happens to be a day that we have a good time on a physical level as well. Like we said, we relax, we eat good food, we spend time with family, and a big, big part of Shabbat is the food that we eat. We make sure, pre-Shabbat, we go out, we buy food. You can ask this guy or any of these guys what Friday afternoon is in their restaurants is crazy, because everybody's running to buy the last minute challahs and grape juice and foods in order to prepare for Shabbat and be able to be ready to enjoy and have a good time. So, you know when you Google a question, so it will start filling out the answer for you and give you like a few different answers. So if you Google, why do we eat? Not why do Jews eat. Why do we eat? What do you think Google fills in the question to be? If you had to guess. So the first one is obviously, why do we eat turkey on Thanksgiving? But the next few options, what do you think they are? So the next one is, why do we eat dairy on Hanukkah? Why do we eat challah on Shabbat? Why do we eat potato latkes? Why do we eat gefilte fish? That means that of all the questions asked from around the world, out of the top 5 questions, 4 of them about Jewish ethnic foods. And I think the reason is pretty obvious. Jews like food. We like to eat. But also, we like Google. We like Google. We like Kugel. We like to Google Kugel. And because food does play a very integral and important part of our culture, and actually the different foods that we eat, the challah, the gefilte fish, the chicken soup, it's not just random, but it all developed because of different parts of the Torah, and different reasons, different halachas, different laws and cultures, and that's why that all developed. So the Talmud actually tells us that food has the ability to bring people closer and has the ability to distance people. It's able to bring people closer because, you know, somebody moves into your neighborhood, you're like, oh, come over for a drink, bring the family, come for dinner. You have one dinner together, all of a sudden you're best friends, especially if you have some good scotch. But what about the family that you didn't invite to your barbecue that you had on Sunday? They no longer like you. Food is a very, very powerful tool and has the ability to bring people together. And that's actually one of the reasons that we eat cholent on Shabbat. Cholent, what is it? It's a big stew. It has many, many different ingredients, whether it's beans, potatoes, and like we said, the different cultures, different communities have different ways of doing it, and that's what we're going to hear about. But the essential idea is so many different ingredients that come together to create one dish. The concept of unity and bringing people together. And tonight, not only are we going to be eating this dish of unity, we're going to have so many different types of it, and that's what's very exciting about it. Now, so where does the concept of cholent come from? Where does the concept come from? So, like we said, there's a mitzvah to eat good food on Shabbat, and it's actually a mitzvah to eat hot food on Shabbat. So for those, and traditionally in Jewish communities, this has been for many, many years, people didn't cook on Shabbat. So Friday night, you cook your food, and you have it ready to eat. But what about when Shabbat morning came, Shabbat lunch, and you wanted to have hot food? What'd you do? So what they did was, they had cholent. Cholent was a dish that would actually cook for many, many hours, up to 24 hours in advance. And today what we have is something called a crock pot, where you just put it in the crock pot, you plug it in, and it could sit there, a slow cooker for a day. What they used to do back then is actually, every family would have their own big pot of cholent, and they would bring it to like the baker's oven. They would keep it in the baker's oven, and then they would carry it home to their home on Shabbat. And this way they were able to have warm food that was cooking, like we said, for a long time, and be able to enjoy it on Shabbat. And the word cholent, so where does the word cholent come from? So I Googled that as well. Where does the word cholent come from? So the closest word that Google found to cholent was colonoscopy. I don't know what the connection is between cholent and colonoscopy. You'll figure that out. But what? There's an inside chef joke in that. The idea behind cholent is actually comes from the Hebrew word shalon. The word cholent, what we call it today, comes from the word shalon. What does shalon mean? Shalon means that it sat. It sat for a while. Because it sat overnight and cooked for a long time. So guys, tonight we'll have some cholent together, we'll make a couple of chaims together, we'll have a good time and enjoy and learn a little bit more about the beauty in Jewish ethnic foods. Thank you all very much. Hope you have a good time.
Thank you guys for having us. So we own Tortilla Restaurant. It's on 12th and University. It's a Mexican sandwich shop and tequila bar. It's not kosher. Sorry. Ironically, growing up in an Orthodox Jewish community, and I do own a kosher restaurant in Jersey, but you know, I remember every Shabbos being like, oh, it's going to be the same old cholent. It's going to taste the same. It's just going to be this bland pot of potatoes and beans that's been sitting there for hours and just so flavorless. And I think, you know, as a culture, as we've grown in the food world over the last decade, now you see people taking things and being a little bit more adventurous and putting their own spin on things. And so when the opportunity arose to kind of come in tonight and do this here, Alfredo, my partner, and I sat down and started thinking about things that took a little bit from both of our growing up, both of our background. Him growing up in Mexico, me growing up in New Jersey, very similar. And so we tried to put together something that we think is interesting, flavorful, a little bit different. You know, a lot of the ingredients are very indigenous to Mexico, adding corn and things like that, things that are very popular in Mexican meals. The idea behind it was to use chilies, but not in a spicy way, to use it in a way that most people would not necessarily know it. And so we've used panca peppers, which are kind of a sweeter pepper, but have that sort of lasting flavor by adding achiote to it, which gives it a little bit of a ting and a spice at the end. There is cilantro, if anyone wants fresh cilantro. Typically in Mexico, you'd eat it with cilantro and tortillas, but obviously we didn't make tortillas for everyone, so. And I got lazy. And drinking it with tequila just because, I mean, you're not going to drink it with scotch if you're in Mexico. No good, respectable Mexican's going to drink scotch, right? So, you know, tequila just seems like the right way to go. And so, enjoy.
Present as the second chef of the evening. We are going to have the executive chef at Ross. He's going to present an Ashkenazi, which is a more Eastern European kind of traditional Eastern European cholent. He's going to show us the beef cholent and the lamb cholent. Okay. So we're going to be doing both of them on the plate. You're going to do half your dish is beef, half is lamb, and you guys are going to get to taste it. Shui's going to explain to us a little bit about his background and then how he made his cholent, the secrets behind cholent. Okay?
Anyways, an Ashkenazi cholent. When I sent Rivka in the list, the recipe to make the cholent, she asked me a very funny question. In which order do you put everything in? So my reply to her was, it's a cholent. You just throw everything together. Cholent, like the rabbi said before, comes from the word of resting. Now, after you finish the cholent, you really need a rest. An Ashkenazi cholent, and I'm sorry to say this, I hope nobody's on a diet, is very fatty. A lot of oil, a lot of fatty meat, especially the lamb. We do not trim it before we put it in. The lamb goes in whole.
The outside is outside.
Yeah. And I have a first aid kit though, so. And just like the rabbi said, in Eastern Europe it used to be very cold. So what did they used to do? Heavy, filling, hot food. Kept you warm for hours, and you didn't need to supply any gas. That's it. I hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Shui Blau, the executive chef at Brach Supermarket. Tonight we served a beef cholent and a lamb cholent. Beef cholent is basically what it is. It's just fatty pieces of meat, either flanken, something like that. Very fatty. Just throw everything together. The beans, the meat, potatoes, onions, whatever you got, just throw it together. And that's your perfect cholent. Lamb is a little bit more difficult. Lamb cholent is you have to take breast of lamb, and you have to braise both sides, make it very crispy. but do not discard the oil, the fat from the lamb. You must put that inside. The fattier the cholent, the better the cholent.
L'chaim, guys. In Morocco, I guess, was no bakery, so what they used to do is basically dig a huge hole underground, and Friday around 2 hours before Shabbat, they used to bring the pots. Used to be a clay pot that's called tagine. They used to be filled with the cholent, covered. They used to bury them under the ground, big stones on top of it, and right before they will eat it on Shabbat, they will just they will set up a fixed time, and they all come together, and each one of them will take their part. The big difference between what we call Cholent and the Moroccan Dafina is the Moroccan Dafina cooked all separate. As you see, we cooked it before in shake and bake bag. You use chickpeas, rice, we use corn, brown eggs. The Iraqi tabit, I don't know much about that because I'm not Iraqi, but I think it's very similar. The only difference is like they cooked only with rice. So basically it's fried potato in the bottom, layer of chickens, and top of it, the rice and brown eggs in the middle between of them. We got some additional dishes from Morocco. We have a beef tagine, beef cooked with fresh apricots. Winter time you can just use dry apricots and raisins. And we have a chicken tagine that's cooked with olives and prunes. The word tagine, it's basically a pot from clay. So feel free. We have an extra food on the bottom. If you have any question, you can ask me now before we start eating. If not, just enjoy the food. I'm Yehuda Vital. I'm the executive and owner of Sova Catering, what used to be former Darna. Tonight we served what we call the Moroccan Cholent, Dafina. Like I explained to the people that were in the testing tonight, the major difference between the Cholent, what you put everything together and mush everything. The Moroccan Dafina, it's cooked all separate, all the ingredients separate. If it's the chickpeas, the fresh corn, the barley, the brown eggs, the potatoes, the meat, all cooked separate. And basically when you serve them, we put them as a buffet style on the table, and each one serve themselves whatever they like. Some people like more than meat, they will take more meat. Some people don't like the brown eggs, they will not have the brown eggs. We served also the tbit, what is the Iraqi cholent. It's basically a layer of potatoes covered with chicken, mostly used, I think, the dark meat of chicken. With some sauté onion on the top. Then we cover it with some brown eggs, put the spices, what it's turmeric, salt, pepper, paprika, covering with water, put them in the oven again for the way we cook the cholent for like 18 or 20 hours for 275 degrees. The word Dafina, it's come from to bury. So in Morocco, I guess in the villages, they don't have like a real oven and electricity. They use basically to created a huge hole in the ground with some stones all around. Right before Shabbat, every family will bring their Dafina, covered, of course, with some sign on it. It will be a different color, different path. They all put it in the ground. They will cover it with the hot stones, with the heavy stones, I'm sorry, and some mud. And right before they will eat it on Shabbat lunch, they will gather in together. They will take the stone on the top, and each one of them will take their parts. The advantage of it, it's keep the temperature, like the flame, the starter before Shabbat is low flame, but by sealing the ground, it's keep the temperature hot for the next 18 hours, and it's slow cooking, so it's give all the flavors, observe all the flavors in the Dafina. Well, arak, it's paired almost with every Moroccan dish, but especially in the cold days, arak, Moroccan that used to live in the Sahara, in the mountain, where the temperature sometimes can reach there to minus degrees. So the arak, it's a good solution to warm up. So that's the most popular alcohol. Arak, what is the tequila to the Mexican, is arak for the Moroccans. So arak, it's paired very, very well with the heavy Dafina in Shabbat. When my parents immigrated from Morocco to Israel, actually we lived in a small town called Yerucham. It was 95% of the population were from Morocco, and we're talking about this late 60s. So it's kind of was almost, my grandmother used to tell me it's reminded a lot of Morocco. And I think in the first 3 years when we arrived to Israel, they used to cook the Dafina the same exactly way they used to be done in Morocco. Bury it in the ground, and it's done in Israel. It's amazing. As a kid, I remember like all of us going there and bringing the Dafina out of under the ground.
Amen.